everyone, welcome back to Mindshack. Today is episode 5. My name is Christina and I'm joined by,
Notable.
and we will be your hosts for today. So, Mindshack is a Gen Z podcast that focuses on discussing societal issues, entrepreneurial leadership, and borders on topics in psychology for Africans. So, today's topic will be something close to my heart because I think it's actually very important. It is mindfulness and self-awareness. Definitely a useful topic for today's times, crazy times we live in. So I think I just want to start off the conversation by asking you, Letabo, what is mindfulness to you, and what is self-awareness?
It's being consciously aware of your surroundings in the present moment. So understanding what could also bring you to that moment and what is your place in that moment.
Just a question before you answer the self-awareness definition for yourself. When you say being aware of yourself, what do you mean? Like, what aspects of yourself are you being aware of?
I think being aware of who you are, where you are, and what you're there to do. So like knowing who you are and where you want to go also.
That's actually a little bit different from my own definition, because I think like what I'm gauging from your understanding is it's like in the bigger picture, understanding your role and like your values and things like that, like kind of from a bigger like perspective. For me, it's actually literally like it's very literal, just being aware of my thoughts, my feelings, kind of like my senses in a way. That's being mindful to me, but I see how your perspective totally makes sense as well. That's why I was asking what you thought about it. I think once you're aware of yourself, like your actual bodily self and your mind and stuff, it becomes a lot easier to be aware of, now your environment. And what about self-awareness?
I think I would use your definition for mindfulness, because when you were saying your definition, it kind of resonated with self-awareness more for me. So I think that would be my definition.
I actually agree with you. I feel like they're very similar. But the take that I had on self-awareness was now more of like your strengths and your weaknesses, or like being aware of yourself, but in context to in context to others. If that makes sense, like who are you in relation to others? When you're aware of your own character, because you see like your character, that the people that see that are those around you. So I think now being self-aware is almost like taking the perspective of those around you and looking at yourself. And then now.
Oh, I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying?
Looking outwards in.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, we're both on the same track. That's what matters. That's what matters. Why do you actually think this is something important to discuss, like mindfulness and or self-awareness?
I think it's important to discuss because it also allows you to know who you are and to know what you want to achieve and how you can achieve those things. Because if you don't know who you are and you're not mindful of who you are and you're not aware of who you are, you won't be aware of where you're going or the impact you have on others.
So I'd actually mentioned this earlier before we were recording. I was telling Otavo how I think specifically mindfulness to me is like very important to talk about, because I think in these times how things are just so hectic, like looking at the world and how much is coming to light, and even the fact that we're in quarantine, and a lot of us who have access to the internet are constantly ingesting, traumatizing information or traumatizing content. People may not actually realize that they're getting overwhelmed and getting anxious, and it's starting to like affect them. And that's why I think mindfulness is important, especially during these times where a lot of people are indoors and kind of alone with themselves and with their thoughts, to almost process how they feel about all the things that they're ingesting on social media. A lot of the time, people act on the beliefs that they have. So if you're able to be aware of those beliefs and ensure that those are the beliefs that you want to have of the world, that could help a lot moving forward and just, help make better decisions. That's definitely for mindfulness. For self-awareness, like you mentioned, it's definitely so that you can see your effect, like the effect you have on people around you. I'm assuming nobody wants to be like wants to be a pain, a pain in, so it would just be great to know how people view you. I don't think, um, I think it's important, especially if you just want to be a part of society, like to just be aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. But that's my very long answer.
There was a really good answer there.
I appreciate you. I definitely appreciate you.
The way being mindful has impacted my life. I think from a young age, actually, it started impacting me
Mm,
because I think you know this, right? That I used to dance when I was a child. So I did ballet
mm-hmm,
until I think a few years, 3 years back. So I did it for most of my life until 3 years ago. I remember when I started dancing, there was a lot that used to happen. So people would make fun of me dancing and all of that. So it made
mm,
me kind of be self aware of what I have to say in order to get people to know the real me. Because I realized
mm.
fighting and trying to like verbalize that this is who I am didn't really work. So I had to be aware of that, of how people see you
Yeah.
and how you can kind of project yourself without having to like shout and be all the way out of there. So just finding a way to impact people by talking instead of like shouting because I knew who I was. So trying to get that
Mm.
forward to other people was kind of how it impacted me. Yeah,
Wow. So at a young age, you already made that realization that you can't force people to see people. You can't force people to see you how you see you. Yeah, the fact that you are mature enough to like not let it get to you and not make it personal, but instead just be like, you know, they'll understand me when they understand me. I actually think a lot of people still like in their adult lives still struggle with this. Just that like fighting how society sees them. Because I think sometimes people forget that you are your actions. People don't necessarily always see the thoughts behind it or like the intentions behind what you do, but like literally the actions that you have, that's all people can see of you, which can be
that's true.
frustrating, I think.
Hmm.
I think I think people can't allow others to accept who they are if they haven't accepted who they are. Because I mean, even like personally, yeah, personally, like just being a young adult, because by the way, listeners, we just finished our first year of uni, so we're still kind of young. Like personally, I'm 19. How old are you, Latabo?
I'm 20.
In his second decade. But personally, I've been, like, like slowly understanding that I think the like true peace is once you accept yourself, because then it's like almost people can smell it, they can sense when you've accepted yourself, and they just kind of like now take you as you are. So I think that's
Mm,
actually a huge part of self-awareness is actually self-acceptance, um,
true.
which helps because if you're constantly fighting who you are, it's evident.
Because if you're fighting who you are and you want other people to accept that, it doesn't necessarily work out.
I don't know why it seriously draws me. I just think a lot of people are so focused on going, like what I mean, like just like working, going, achieving this, or just being the best at everything and not really like thinking about whether that's whether those things are actually what they want.
I actually get what you're
Huh?
saying because if you're just doing and you don't know who you are, it
Mm.
ends up affecting you in a greater way. Because
Yeah,
I think
perfectly
when you
said.
get people at a certain time going through what they call like midlife crises and all of that, because
Yes.
reaching an age where now all the things that you dreamt for yourself and that you've now had to let go because you forgot
Mm.
them come back, and now you try to compensate for them. So I
Mm-hmm.
get what you're kind of saying.
Speaking of mindfulness and self-awareness, what exactly do you do to help yourself be more self-aware and more mindful? Like, what are some of the practices that you have?
Through the conversation, one thing that I've seen is also having self reflections and also having
Mm.
reflections with friends, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think it helped with when you're defined what self awareness and mindfulness meant, maybe having an outside opinion could also help you. So sitting down with trusted friends, family, and actually just
Mm.
talking about who you are, where you want to be, and how they perceive you could also allow you to see yourself and to see where you could be.
So true. I think that's actually very important. Getting the opinion of people who know you. Of course, who
Mm,
love you, so they don't give you completely like messed up feedback. But I think just being around people who know you, so they can tell you about yourself from a viewpoint that you don't have. It's similar to the Johari's window concept. Like that. There's a box of what everybody knows, you and them included. There's a box where they know and you don't know. And I think and then there's also a box where you know and they don't know. And then there's
mm,
another box where it's like nobody knows those aspects about yourself. Like that's where you surprise yourself. And I remember I was talking to my dad and he was saying the goal in life is to reduce the boxes of like other people knowing and you not knowing and you knowing and them not knowing and increasing the box of what everybody knows. That's a reality where you're living more of your truth. So like that's
oh,
growth. But yeah, I just think it's important to actually ask people around you how you are, because I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult to digest even this negative criticism on yourself, because you're just like, Psh, I'm not like that. But it's just because the memories you have of yourself are very selective. But that's a whole other
mm,
conversation. Everybody has a bad side and a good side, and that's just life. But
mm. And you have to accept both sides. I think
I
that's
know.
something I'm going through this year actually, is
Mm.
accepting both sides. Because I think earlier this year it did it showed me more that I need to accept
Mm.
more of my bad sides in order for me to grow in a positive direction. So I'm still on the journey though. I'm still trying
I
to
mean,
accept both sides properly, but hopefully we'll get there.
the journey is quite long, but the fact that you're on it, props to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, denial is a worse, like it's a much worse place to be at.
True.
Definitely. Some practices I definitely like to highlight though is actually meditation. I was put on
Mm-hmm.
this by a friend, but there's a video of J. Cole talking about meditation. He put it so simply, it just clicked. So he was saying that the way he meditates is by becoming aware of like the sounds around him. He uses the sense of hearing to help him become more mindful. So he literally
Oh,
just closes his eyes. He listens to the sounds around him. Like let's say personally for me, I can hear the water pump or birds chirping or like whoever's in the kitchen right now. And it sounds too simple. I think that's why a lot of people aren't actually as mindful as they think, because the concept is a bit too obvious, but it's
mm,
so important because you're literally just like getting out of your mind and listening to things around you. Or let's say if you're eating, you're tasting the food that you're eating. It's literally giving a lot of energy and attention to your senses to kind of remove you from your mind and allow Now, the thoughts entering your mind, like you're able to sift through them because you're not giving all your attention to your mind. Um, I think that's something like that's a form of meditation that's really helped me, along with journaling. I know
Oh.
a lot of people are just like the whole Dear Diary thing is so middle school. Maybe not Dear Diary, but this is, I mean, I have different journals. I have like a prayer journal. I have a journal for just literally random thoughts that come throughout my day. And
Hmm.
it could be because maybe I just think too much, but that's helped me filter my thoughts. Or like when I start to get overwhelmed, even just saying the actual thoughts aloud, sometimes it like allows me to hear myself, which can like help me sift out what's completely irrational, what's rational, what's helpful, what's detrimental in the long run. And I think that's helped me with my own mental health, just that practice of seeing what you're thinking. Sometimes people don't realize how important it is, and I think even just like that's why talking with friends is so useful, because like as you talk to people and hear your own thoughts, you can understand your mind better. It's with trial and error. I'm really just expressing the things that have actually genuinely worked for me and a couple of other people that I've talked to. Mindfulness is really different for everyone, but
True.
that's useful. But I mean, we've talked about self-awareness. So the reality of COVID is I am in my head a lot now, like way more than I usually am. So I've had to become so intentional with being mindful and aware of the actual reality that I'm living, and not the one that's starting to like plague my mind, if that makes sense. But I mean, we don't have to turn this into a therapy session. I'm just
I think a lot of stuff that we have said are really
mm,
good. And I think for everybody else, I think making up their own, let's say, definition of being mindful and also how they can act it out, it's also up to them to decide. They can use some of the practices we use, but they should also find some that resonate closely with them. Like I know some people like exercising as a way to
mm,
meditate and find their center. Others use journaling, talking, or even just sitting, playing games or cooking or anything. But
mm.
just find a way to find who you are and to be aware of who you are.
What belief do you think people should have when they're starting this, like their journey on being mindful and self-aware?
When I first started, I remember I started off by thinking it'll all be okay and believing that whatever
Mm,
happens, it'll all be okay. And that's something even now I always just say to myself, it'll all be okay. That even if you feel like you're falling 6 feet under, there's no way out, it'll all be okay.
personally, I think when I was starting off, what was very, very helpful for me was reminding myself to be gentle with myself. I think in this road to like self development and understanding myself and even just being mindful of my environment, it's like be gentle, like get there slowly. You don't have to understand all your thoughts and feelings overnight or see how the whole world sees you overnight. It's like these things genuinely take time. So like be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself. And I understand that eventually it will click. I think there's, at least personally for me, there's that pressure to just get things done, like to just do things to get them done. So I think mindfulness isn't something you can just get done. Like you have to actually just let it flow. And eventually you learn over time what works for you, what helps you. That's why I'm saying like being gentle. And if anything, I actually tell myself, because I have this mentality that I'm parenting myself, literally, that like the same way my mom takes care of me, now I'm taking care of me as an adult, like I'm taking care of me. So sometimes I almost even treat myself like like delicately. Like I remind myself to tell myself kind things the same way like a mother would to a child, not babying myself, but just being
Just
gentle.
being kind to yourself.
Exactly, because I think with growth
Self-love.
or with anything new, exactly, with anything new, it's just slowly, like grow into it. Don't necessarily, like you don't have to dive head first. There's no need. Like just slowly you'll get there. As long as I'm conscious and intentional, that's all I can do. What's so interesting about growing up though is that that jump from being taken care of to literally like being an adult is a little bit harsh. I'm not gonna lie. Like as I'm like, let's say, leaving the nest or finding my own identity and stuff, it used to not make sense to me, like how you're literally being treated like a child, by your parents, taking everything to being taken care of, and then you're an adult. And that's why I'm saying I've been trying to like teach myself that you can be an adult, like do adult things, but how you get there, just remember the same way you learned how to be yourself today, like through your parents, like patience and like kind words and support. Do the same for yourself, because like adults are really just grown-up children trying to figure shit out. But other than that, thanks so much for this convo. I've actually learned something new.
I've also learned a few new things. Thank you very much for
that. So thanks everybody for listening. We will be back next week with our new episode. But until then, please follow us on social media, Mindshack on Instagram, MIND_SHACK_. That's where you'll be getting most of the updates or any other information on our podcast. So please check us out. We will be having posts where we can interact with you guys and understand, what you want us to talk about or questions you'd like us to answer, and just, get to know you guys as well. But other than that, thanks so much for listening to our podcast today. We hope that you learned something interesting, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, guys.